Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.
That's right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to What Women Want Talk Radio, and thank you for joining us for our show tonight, Beyond Your Perceived Boundaries. I'm here with my co-host, Kristen West.
Hello, everybody.
We're excited tonight to have Arielle Ford on the show. She's launched the careers of legendary people like Deepak Chopra, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, and the list goes on, actually. And along with also Siri Lindley, a former world champion, who now coaches world champions. So very exciting show tonight, Beyond Your Perceived Boundaries. Now, I never imagined I would be saying that What Women Want Talk Radio has reached over 1 million downloads since we first hit the airwaves. And between latalkradio.com's archives, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, and of course all over social media, you can find us everywhere. So we're actively taking sponsors for our show for the next few months. It's more affordable than you think, so email us for a complete deck through our website, whatwomenwantradio.com. Of course, after the show. My background comes from the high fashion modeling industry with Ford, New York. And after that, I was a magazine editor. Then that led me to hosting and reporting regularly for Better TV, City Buzz, all the TV networks across the country, both regional and national. And I'm also a regular contributor on NBC and Fox. I founded the company What Women Want Networking 7 years ago. It goes alongside with the show, What Women Want Talk Radio. And we're nationwide with several regional chapters hosting our second National Women's Conference in Atlanta. I'm so excited. October 19th through 21st at the Hyatt Regency. And I'm also a St. Martin's Press author. And most important job, the mom of teenage twin girls, which is wearing me out. And Kristen, I'd like to hear about your award-winning career and soon-to-be award-winning show, Domain of Horror, that's taking off very nicely, I see.
It is. We just got a acceptance into the Direct Short Online Film Festival.
Congratulations.
Thank you for our talk show. And I'm going to have you guest co-host this the next time that you're in town. I think that would be fun.
Actually, I would love that.
Yes. So we have episodes that stream for the website Domain of Horror. We interview the top horror stars of the indie horror film community. And also I'm an actress and I work a lot in the horror industry. And I have a film coming out called The Lich by James Balsamo. And I'm just really excited. I mean,
no, it's amazing. And I know we've had a couple of shows about this. It's the fastest growing genre in the movie industry out there right now, right? The horror film industry.
It is true. It's also one of the most profitable. So
good for you.
Yes. So it's well, if you're a producer, especially, it's a very profitable genre. If someone wants to make money in film, you should definitely look at horror movies because they are consistently profitable. So
it's not all about the acting, huh?
Well, you have your art and then you have your business. It's called show business.
Yeah, it's better to have, these days you have to have several modalities to your talent. Like back when I was a model, all you had to do was be a model. Now you have to act and you have to dance and you have to sing and you have to be, on TV and everything else. So, I was a model and a little bit of an actress, but these days you really have to have the full package. And I'm assuming it's the same in acting, just like you are doing yourself.
It's very true. You have to be able to communicate and be an advocate for your film. You have to be able to be interviewed. You have to have a good social media presence. You have to, and it's true, red carpet walks are very much like modeling in a way. You catwalk down, you pose, all that kind of stuff. So you do have to be a multifaceted individual to work in any area of entertainment. And you have to be a great host, too, just like Judy Goss.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank one of our sponsors for tonight's show. Everyone buys printing in some form. And the company you can trust for great service is Design and Print Resource. Now, Gloria Strayer, who's got a great story, by the way, she's from Compton in California, and just a fantastic story of survival. And she's now the founder and owner, well, for 40 years, I must say, of Design and Print Resource in Anaheim, California. And her services include warehousing and distribution. So give them a call at 714-687-9200 or go to dndpresource.com. And I have an announcement before we start. In 2 weeks, an exciting conference is coming up in Atlanta, and you really shouldn't miss it, especially if you're in the Atlanta area. But you know what? I just bought my ticket down there, and it was really cheap, so I'm very excited to go. It's a business member for What Women Want Networking. She's hosting her annual 3-day event called Master Your Money. It's her 7th year doing it. It's a combination of mindset and money and networking, and it's just a really great event. So, like I said, I'll be there if you want to connect in person. And she was recently on our show talking about it, and she's got a special offer going on for our listeners until they sell all the seats. It's $500 off the regular $595 ticket price, okay? So if you go and put in Save 500, you can buy a ticket for $95, and she's actually giving a money-back guarantee the first day. If you don't like it, by the end of the day, you get your money back. So that's pretty good. Go to revenuebreakthrough.com to check it out, and I can't wait to see everyone there. Let's bring on Arielle Ford. She's a love and relationship expert and a leading personality in the personal growth and contemporary spirituality movement. For the past 25 years, she's been living, teaching, and promoting consciousness through all forms of media. She's a speaker and the producer and host of Evolving Wisdom's Art of Love series, and the author of 11 books, including The Soulmate Secret and Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate. 5 years after her sister Debbie Ford succumbed to cancer, Arielle is speaking about Your Holiness, a prayer book written by Debbie before her death and discovered through the talents of medium James Van Praagh. Welcome back to the show, Arielle.
Thank you. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing fantastic. It's been such a long time. You were actually on the show when we first started almost 4 years ago.
I remember that. Yes, with Helen Powers.
Yes, with Helen Powers. And I was just talking to her earlier that you were going to be on the show. I know she's listening right now. So we're sending love out to Helen. And, you helped us really launch the show. So I'm very grateful to you for that.
Oh, I'm happy to be back.
Absolutely. And, you've done so much over the years besides, launching my show. You've launched the careers of some very successful luminaries in in to, writing many of your own 11 books. Is this your 12th book now that you've written?
Well, no, I've written 11, and the book, Your Holiness, is Debbie's book. I
Debbie, right.
Managed to get it published.
I can't wait to hear how you discovered that. You're traveling, you're speaking. But this type of work, I feel like, seems almost like a new chapter, no pun intended.
On many levels it is. I was in the publishing industry for many years as both a book publicist and a literary agent. And then really 10 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long already, I started writing about finding love and keeping love and being love, and that's really become my focus. Except for the last year and a half, working on getting Debbie's book out. So that's been a lot of fun and a really interesting process.
Well, let's get right to it. I'm excited to hear how you discovered this and what the story is behind. Again, no pun intended, but what went on with this book that you pulled out of the ethers?
Well, here's what happened. So my sister and I have been friends with James Van Praagh for decades. And for the people out there who don't know who he is the world's most famous medium. He talks to dead people. The movie The Sixth Sense was about his life. The TV series
was it?
Whisperer, The Ghost Whisperer with Jennifer Love Hewitt, that was all based on his life. And he's really good at what he does. And a little more than a year ago, he called to tell me that he had moved to San Diego, where we live. And he said, I want you to bring your husband and your mom and come see my new house, and then I'll give you a reading with Debbie. Now, this is a really big deal, because you cannot buy a reading with James Van Praagh. If you want to see him talk to dead people, you have to go to one of his big public events where there's 3,000 or 5,000 people, and then hope your loved one on the other side is pushy enough to get through to give you a message. So we go up there, we see his brand new house. It's stunning, of course, and we sit down in his office for the reading, and Debbie shows up instantly. And the first thing she says is, Arielle, you have to write a prayer book with me. And I instantly say back to her, no possible way. I don't want to write my own books, and I don't want to write your books. And she's like, no, you have to write a prayer book with me. And I was like, no, you don't understand. That's not going to happen. And so then all these other dead relatives came through, you know, my husband's parents, my stepfather, who's my mother's soulmate, and then Debbie's popping in and out. And each time she says the same thing over and over again, you have to write a prayer book with me. And so the reading goes on for 90 minutes, and at the end of the reading, she's just so insistent, you have to write a prayer book with me. And finally, I just said to James, I said, how am I going to do this? This is not the kind of book I write. I said, unless you're willing to help me, because you're the direct line to her, you can hear her, I can't, we can't do this. And he said, well, we'll figure it out. So we finally say, okay, Debbie, don't know how this is going to happen, but we'll figure it out. So we're driving home, and as we're driving, my husband says to me, you know, I spent so much time with your sister. You know, I took her to so many doctor's appointments and chemo treatments. And he said, I remember her telling me that she had written some prayers. Why don't you get a hold of her office and see if they have copies of them? Because if so, that would be the start of a book. So I thought, okay, great. I had no idea she'd ever written a prayer, but I email her office, just a one-sentence email. Do you by any chance have copies of any prayers that Debbie wrote? And they write me back and say, oh, we can do better than that. She wrote an entire manuscript. I've attached it. Now, I'm completely freaking out because I was her literary agent. So for her to have written a book that I didn't know about was mind-blowing. But I thought, well, I don't know how this happened, but I opened the document, and there was 200 pages, beautifully written, fully edited, the best thing she's ever written, stunning, gorgeous prayer book. And it's more than just a collection of prayers. I mean, there's a lot of her original prayers and prayers by Emmett Fox and Marianne Williamson and Rumi, but it's so much more than that. It's this very prescriptive book about how prayer saved her life when she was rehabbing from being a drug addict, and how you can use prayer to really heal every part of yourself and every part of your life. So I read the manuscript, and I pick up the phone, and I call her editor at Harper. And I say to him, hey, Gideon, hi, it's Arielle, how are you? And he stops me, and he says, I've been meaning to call you. I've been feeling so guilty for the last 4 years. Your sister always wanted to write a prayer book, and I always talked her out of it. And I was like, oh.
Just out of the blue?
That's the first thing he says to me. And I said, well, Gideon, it's Redemption Day. I just sent you the manuscript. So 3 days later, he called me back and said, of course we're going to buy this, and we can't wait to publish it. And the book came out a few weeks ago, and that's how we found it. The reason I didn't know about it was she had written it, and when Gideon told her he wasn't going to buy it, she put it away and never bothered talking to me about it.
That is so magical. Now, I'd love to let the listeners in on exactly who Debbie Ford was. In her introduction, Marianne Williamson said, Debbie Ford will always be known for pulling down God's grace from the ethers of spirit into the regions of the earth. Could you just tell everybody, who Debbie was and what she did?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, she had been a drug addict. And when she was in her late 20s, she finally realized that if she didn't get off drugs, she was going to die. I mean, she was a tiny little thing. She was really skinny and scrawny, and she was using massive amounts of drugs. And she had gone to rehab centers before, but she'd always run away on the 10th day of each time she went. So she was now checked into her 4th treatment center, and got on her hands and knees and prayed to stay one more day and to stay one more day, and that's how she finally got sober. But after she had given up drugs, she wanted to really heal herself on the deepest level so that she would never use again. And that started this whole path of studying transpersonal psychology and all kinds of different kinds of treatments. And along the way, she synthesized the shadow process, right? That this became, oh, you know what? I'm hearing, oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes,
there's a little bit of an echo.
Okay, well, I'll just go for it.
Oh, I think it stopped. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, she created this body of work known as the shadow process, where she has people identify their dark side or their shadow self, the things they most hate about themselves. And then she teaches you to find the gift in that side, how to love those parts of yourself, while she's simultaneously also teaching you how to embrace and love your light side. And her very first book was called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Oprah found it, was madly in love with the book, had her on the show many, many times, and she became a thought leader, a personal growth teacher, and went on to write 9 more books until we found Your Holiness, which is her 11th book. So that's sort of the short version of who she is, but you can learn all about her at her website, which is debbieford.com.
Now, I have a question, Arielle. Up until that point, had you published a book of your own, or was this Debbie ushering you into this?
No, I've actually published my first book in 1990. So I was a writer actually long before she was, and we wrote about very different things. So my books are about finding love, keeping love, and being love. And all of Debbie's work is very emotionally based psychological books about learning to really love yourself.
You know, I think it's interesting because there is an idea that you really can't extend love to another person unless you love yourself. Do you feel that's true?
I don't. And I know that's a big thing that you hear from people. Well, you can't find your soulmate. You can't find a love partner until you're madly in love with yourself. And the truth is...
Really? You don't believe that?
I don't believe it. No. Here's what I know for sure, and I've been doing this a long time. Part of the thing that happens when you are with your soulmate / life partner is that you get the deepest kind of healing. Because when you can see into somebody else's eyes how much they love you, you become healed. Now, this doesn't mean if you're somebody who totally 100% hates yourself, you're into self-loathing, you're damaging yourself. No, you're not in shape to find a partner. But the ordinary average person with the ordinary amount of neuroticism and self-doubt and fear and whatever, don't let that stop you from finding love, because we are all very imperfect human beings. And what we want to do is find someone who falls in love with our weirdness, our imperfections, our quirkiness, and goes on the road of life as our best friend, our lover, our safe place to land.
Kristen, she's making a lot of sense, isn't she?
She is making a lot of sense. And I think one of the things about love and this experience that you also described about Debbie and Debbie coming through after her death through a medium is that love really doesn't have boundaries. The truest expression of love doesn't have boundaries.
You're absolutely right. Love never dies. Just like our spirit, our soul never dies. Does our body die and go away? Yes, it does. But who we are on a personality level and who we are as a spirit never dies. And in fact, one of the gift bonuses that we're giving people who buy the book, which you can find at her website, is I interviewed Debbie about the book through James Van Praagh right before it was published, and we're giving away this half-hour video where you can hear her words through James about why she wrote this book and what she's learned about love and forgiveness now that she's on the other side, and it's really breathtakingly beautiful.
Oh, I love that. You're doing such a great thing by extending her legacy. I mean, it's so fantastic that you discovered this, and James helped you, set the stage for it and really roll it out. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's really important for people to understand that, yes, it's incredibly painful when somebody we love dies and leaves the earth plane. But the truth is, you can establish a new relationship with them. That even though you can't hug them and you can't text them, they're still with you all the time. And in fact, I wrote an entire book about this subject that I give away for free. It's at loveontheotherside.com. Because I wanted people to really know this, and it has all kinds of true stories about people on the other side who are helping their loved ones on this side, because they do become your guardian angels, and they do want to help you, but you have to ask for the help. They won't interfere with your life without your permission. But if you just close your eyes and drop into your heart, if I said to him, Debbie, I really need some guidance on XYZ, she may come to me in a dream, or sometimes I hear her whisper to me when I'm in the bathtub, or somehow a sign will appear and I'll know that she sent it. So we all have that possibility. Our ancestors want to help us. We just have to ask.
I have a question, and it might be too large of a scope for the amount of time we have, but how does that how does that work if you believe in reincarnation, though?
But as you can believe in reincarnation, because your spirit could be over there, right? Like Debbie might come back. She might be reborn. But on the quantum level, on the spirit level, you can be in more than one place at once. And it's a really deep conversation, one better to be had with James Van Praagh or Deepak Chopra. But
you mean we can't do it in the next 4 minutes?
Probably not the next 4 minutes, but here's what I know about quantum science, all right? And this has been proven out that, so in the quantum field, they know two things for sure. One is that there's no time. There's no past and there's no future. There's just this now moment. The other thing that they know is that we are already connected to everything and everybody. So the form that they're in isn't necessarily so important, because I am here in La Jolla, California, in my physical body where my feet are, but there may be a part of my spirit that is also on the other side in that form, and I may also be living a parallel lifetime in New Delhi, India right now. Like, right now I don't know for sure any of this, but having read books by people like Richard Bach, who wrote about this in the book One so brilliantly, we can be in multiple places at once. And I don't know that it's useful to spend a lot of time thinking about that, because right now when you have the physical body and you here on Earth, there are things that you can do here that you can't do on the other side without a body. Things like, having sex, eating delicious food, sleeping in a comfortable bed. They don't do those things on the other side. So if those are things that you really enjoy, then enjoy having the experience of being a human being now on planet Earth.
Judy, I can just imagine you multitasking up a frenzy.
Well, I was just saying I might be there in the studio with you. As listeners know, I am in New York, but I do a lot of times feel like I'm in LA because I feel so connected to it. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely not a subject that we can broach in the next couple of minutes. But that does give something for us to think about. And your experience and what you've done, Arielle, is just so respectable and highly researched and educated. So it really gives us, we have to bring you back. And I want to have more answers.
I love talking about this stuff, but here's what the one thing I really want you guys to know for sure is that there's no shortage of love in this world or the other dimensions. All right, just like we all have enough fresh air to breathe, enough clean water to drink, at least in the Western world, there's more than enough love for everybody. And the way to have more love, especially romantic love, is to spend time each day going into a deep state of gratitude for all the love you already have, for your parents, your kids, your siblings, your coworkers, your best friends, your neighbors, your cats, your dogs. If you just focus attention on being grateful for you, oh my God, I'm so lucky, I have so much love, you will make your heart magnetic to even having more love.
Attitude of gratitude.
Yep.
That's for sure. Well, congratulations on your new book. I think you can find it pretty much everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble,
Right.
all over the place.
And if you're interested, just go to DebbieFord.com, because if you click through her site to buy the book, then you have access to all these free bonuses that include the video and a bunch of her audio meditations, and also the chance to win a reading with James Van Praagh, which, as I said earlier, can't be bought.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Your Holiness, Discover the Light Within. And Debbie Ford is with two B's, Debbie?
Yes?
DebbieFord.com.
Like the car.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Arielle, for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure, as always, and I'd love to continue the discussion in the future.
All right. Thank you. It was great being with you.
Well, we're going to get back to this dimension now for a minute. That was so
I know. I'm
amazing.
like, wow, beyond your perceived boundaries. It's just, when I wrote the title of the show, I thought that it would be so many different angles that we could discuss this from, right? So many different perspectives of boundaries.
It's true, and many different perceptions of boundaries and what they are and what they are not. And Siri Lindley is definitely an expert on this. She's a former world triathlon champion. She retired from competition in 2003. She was number 1 in the world when she did retire. She now coaches some of the best athletes in the world in the sport, as well as being a worldwide speaker and author of the book Surfacing: From the Depths of Self-Doubt to Winning Big and Living Fearlessly. Siri is also the co-founder of Believe Ranch and Rescue, which is a nonprofit horse rescue in Boulder, Colorado. Welcome to the show, Siri.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much. I was loving listening to Arielle. I wanted the conversation to continue as well.
I know. Well, we're just going to have Arielle back. I think we're just going to have a symposium on this with her and David Baer. Don't you think, Judy?
Oh my gosh, it was so fascinating, the things she was saying, especially towards the end. I was like, wait a minute, hold on, go give us some detail about that.
Exactly. Well, Siri, you've had your experiences with boundaries as well in a very, very earth-bound kind of way. Siri, I want to ask you, at what point did you know that you had athletic talent? Did it manifest as at a young age?
Well, I was very athletic for the first 20 years of my life, and I had been a 3-sport athlete: field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse. But my greatest limiter was that I was one of those people, and I think some of you can probably relate to me, that on the outside it looked like, wow, she's got it made, life must be great. But on the inside, I was absolutely riddled by anxiety and stifled by fear and just really lost inside my own skin. And
now, when was this? When you were younger, or?
This was pretty much my whole life up until college. And I reached a point, I was at Brown University. And again, I was a 3-sport athlete. I had got into a really wonderful university, but inside I locked myself in this self-imposed prison. And a lot of us, we all have things that we go through when we're growing up, and they leave scars, and it's how we handle those things that kind of determines our future. And on one day, I started reading a ton of books, and I realized that I read a Tony Robbins book. It was called Unlimited Power. And it's like I woke up on that day. I read the whole book overnight, and I realized that what is real and what is possible is what I believe is real and what I believe is possible. And this doesn't have to be my story. Like, the story I was living was, I was a pleaser, and I was trying to achieve, and I was trying to be everything for everyone else. But in the meantime, I didn't even know who I was. And talk about loving yourself. Like, I did not have a love for myself or even an appreciation for myself. And I realized that my mission in life was going to be to discover, who am I? What am I made of? What matters to me? And sports, especially when I discovered the sport of triathlon, which was totally not meant to be my sport. I discovered it. I was 23 years old. I didn't know how to swim. But I fell in love with this sport, and I decided that I wanted to be the best in the world in this sport. And that was like a crazy, ridiculous, embarrassing dream to have because I didn't even know how to swim. But what drew me to it, I think, is that I was so desperate to figure out who I was and prove to myself that I could make a difference in this world and that I could achieve something that I thought was special and that I could, make myself proud. And that's kind of where the whole journey began.
I want to take a step back. Sorry, I just knocked my microphone. I want to take a step back really quick because it's such an amazing transition that you made. And you talk about that inner unrest. And I know I've experienced it. A lot of people who have a very high volume of achievement experience it. And I think sometimes we feel, especially if we're gifted in something like a sport or we have an exceptional talent, there's that old saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think that can weigh on people a lot. Now, you also, you said you had developed OCD after an intense trauma when you were 4 years old. In a way, is that kind of creating a boundary? Because I can't do this until I do this, and this. Was that kind of a way of creating a boundary for you?
Well, so basically, long story short, at 4 years old, my mom had fallen in love with this guy that was super rich and super famous, and they had this, she had divorced my father, and they had this tremendous love affair, and he ended up breaking up with her. Now, they later ended up getting married, but after this first breakup, she was devastated. She didn't want to stick around anymore. And so basically there was an event, and it was extremely painful. And in that moment, what happens when we're young and we experience an event that's traumatic, you give it a meaning. And the meaning I gave this event is that I am not important enough to stick around for. I am not enough to make the people that I care about the most happy and to make them want to stick around. And so my whole life became, and later on, my mom ended up marrying this man. They were married for 13 years. And when I was 16, he divorced her. And of course, I go back to that day when I was 4 years old, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose my mom. I need to do whatever it takes. I got to keep her safe. I have to keep her happy. I have to make sure she feels loved. I have to be enough for her to want to stick around. And I put this on myself. It's not like she was there saying, Siri, be my parent, keep me alive. She wasn't doing that at all. She was actually probably handling it way better than I would have expected her to, but I put this on myself. And in order to deal with that kind of pressure that I was putting on myself, that kind of this meaning that I can lose everything, because she meant everything to me if I'm not enough, led me to, yes, overachieving, but also spending every minute of my life just wanting to do whatever I had to do to feel as though I was making her happy and making life worth living. And so the OCD became my way to just get rid of some of that pressure and that pain and that fear and that anxiety. And it was crippling. And when it was time to go off to school at Brown University, my mom, of course, was like, go, you've got to go. My God, this is amazing. And I didn't want to go. But I went off anyway. And being away from home, the interesting thing, a lot of us, I think, we stick around when we think someone needs us so desperately. And I think what happens is we actually stunt their growth. We actually prevent them from finding their own strength. And by leaving, by me going off to college, my mom ended up finding her strength and becoming, the woman that I'm so proud that she is today, just accomplishing so much and happy and joyous, and that people love her. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you do have to step away to help those people get stronger. But sorry, I went a little off track there. But
it's okay. No, it's interesting because I think you bring up a very valid insight, is that sometimes when we hem ourselves in trying to support someone we love, we actually do them a giant disservice. because they can't, because they get accustomed to a pattern of behavior that's not necessarily healthy, and it's certainly not healthy for the person that's sort of hemming themselves in as well. Now, I want to talk about this sudden epiphany where you suddenly stopped exhibiting those OCD behaviors. Describe that moment for me. What was happening right then?
So I had just finished reading this book, and I realized that this story, that's all it is. It's a story. I have this story that it's all up to me. And when I realized that I could change that story by changing my focus, and my focus needed to now be on me and creating the life that I dream of and becoming all that I wanted to become.
Yeah, but what made you realize that it was all up to you?
This book, Unlimited Power, like literally there was nothing that crazy, unique in the book, but it woke me up and made me realize that life isn't happening to me. Like, I need to create my life. I need to, if I want something, I need to go out and get it. And biggest thing that I decided on this day is I need to do something that scares me every single day. Not something that, those fears that were scaring me and giving me all this OCD, but go out and do something. And that became doing a triathlon. It scared the crap out of me, but I knew I needed to get out and prove to myself that that I can be afraid, but if I go out and do it anyway, that is going to make me stronger. And every day I can do something a little bit more scary, and that will give me a little bit more confidence. And I should, as an aside here, basically I felt like a crazy person. Anybody that has OCD to the extent that I had it, you feel like you can't even function in your life. And somebody said to me, and it must have come from this book too, or from someone else, and they said, what you focus on is what you create. Where focus goes, energy flows. And yes, that came from that book. And I thought, oh my God, well, if I'm focusing on losing my mom and her dying and losing love and losing support and losing this, I'm going to lose it because that's what I'm focusing on. So I almost, in a way, freaked myself out by saying the more I think these thoughts, the more likely they're going to happen. So that in itself was enough leverage for me to just stop right then and there. And that's a pretty powerful thing. If you think that what you're doing, originally you think it's helping, but it's actually making it more likely that these horrible things are going to happen, you're going to stop doing them.
Well, I think,
but as far...
I think worry doesn't serve anybody, and I think you're absolutely right about that. You can manifest your fears if that's what you focus on. Now, I want to ask you, because I've watched interviews you've given, and you described your first race as a disaster, your first triathlon as a disaster, and that people actually laughed at you and they openly pitied you. Many people probably would have never done that again because of the shame factor involved in that. Did you feel the shame at that time? And if you did, how did you overcome it?
Well, I felt the shame after the fact. So during the race, here's the thing, and this is why I knew that I had to do this. During the race, I had never felt so alive in my entire life. I was doing something that was challenging me and stretching me, but I was, exhilarated, and I felt free, and I felt courageous and brave. So the way I felt when I was in the race, and I didn't see all those things happening. Like, I was oblivious to all of that. But what happened is I went home that night, and I got in bed. And for me, I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but I get in bed at night and I become like my most vulnerable. And I start remembering, the things that people said and the way, looks that people gave me. And that's when all these images came shooting into my head. The people like covering their faces, like, oh my God, pretend you're not looking. The teenagers or younger kids that were like laughing at me. Oh my God, look at her. She's got a spandex down to her ankle and one up her, she's got a camel toe. Like, they were laughing because I was an embarrassment. And all these images came back to me, and I just started bawling. And in that moment, it was making a decision. Am I going to give in and not do this thing that has made me feel more alive than anything else I've ever done in my life? Am I not going to do that because people made me feel shame? Or am I going to prove to them that with hard work and devoting my entire heart and soul and every ounce of my being to making this happen, that I'm going to make this happen? And I will go from being the worst athlete on the planet to being the best in the world. And that was my fire. That lit my soul on fire. Like, that became everything that pushed me, because I never wanted to feel that feeling again of being laughed at. Like, it's, and that's where I say to all women, all men, anybody that has that happen where they feel humiliated or they feel embarrassed because people laugh at them or people tell them they can't do it, and why are you doing that? You suck at this. You know, the best feeling in the world is when you silently go about making sure that you're going to prove every single one of those people wrong by getting out there and giving everything you can to making it happen. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I had to take on the mantra of I'm either winning or I'm learning, because I failed often and I was disappointed often. But I kept looking upon every failure and every disappointment as a learning experience. I would grow, I would get better, I would improve, I'd have better insight into what it would take for me to get to the level that I dreamed of getting to. And you've got to be willing to fall.
I have a question. Were you dreaming of becoming a world champion athlete? Was that your goal, or were you, what was your perceived success?
So that night when I was crying in bed, I went into my mom's room because I had gone out to Colorado to do this race. And I walked in the room and she's like, "Oh, Siri, I know. I'm just so proud of you. You did it. And now you can go do something that you're good at."
Oh, geez.
And I looked at her. And I'm like, "No, Mom, I'm going to be the best in the world in this sport." And she looked at me, and I don't know where this came from, because I was not a confident person. I was definitely not cocky. So these words, when they came out of my mouth, they shocked me even. Like, that was a grand statement. But what it did is it made me accountable to me and also to the person that's more to me than anyone else in my life. And that's pretty powerful, because, I didn't want to let either of us down. And I should say there was another motivation to this whole thing. We don't really have time, do we? But I have so much I want to tell you girls.
Well, you're so full of wisdom and insight, even with your own life, and almost like psychoanalyzing it, because you've been through so much and you've experienced such events in your life that others haven't, so it's just a pleasure to sit here honestly and listen to you tell your stories and see what you figured out from, moving along in your journey.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I want to share with all of you is that, we often think when we're in a bad space, or say we've had, 20 years of living a life that hasn't really been that fulfilling, like, that doesn't have to be your story. That doesn't have to be your life. You can change it in a heartbeat by just, changing the meaning you give things, or changing what you're focusing on, changing what you're doing. And don't be afraid to kind of get vulnerable and take risks, and don't be afraid to fall, because if we are scared of failing, or we're scared of falling, we'll never reach those ultimate goals that we set for ourselves. Because in order to achieve that, I ended up achieving this impossible dream, and I'm not special. Like, I don't have something that all of you don't. I just had this intense hunger to want to prove to myself, most importantly, that I had what it took inside of me to achieve something that I thought was really special, and that I could make a difference in this world. And, I'd come out to my father when I was 23 years old, and he was crying on the other side of the phone, just bawling. And he said, "Please tell me this isn't true. I couldn't have a daughter that's gay." And he's bawling. And I said, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I hope you'll love me anyway." And he hung up the phone. I didn't hear from him for another 2 years. And then I would just get like a call on Christmas saying Merry Christmas. And that was it. And so in that moment, and at 23 years old, you hear that. And it's like, everything that I've accomplished
devastating
up until this point, it means nothing. Now that I'm gay, none of that matters, because I'm gay. And so none of those successes, getting into good school, being a great athlete, none of that matters because I'm gay. So this mission was for me, most importantly, because I was lost and I wanted to be someone that could make a difference in the world. And I wanted to be someone that could, inspire others. And I had to go take on something where I could, kind of learn to love and appreciate myself by proving that I can take something on that I'm terrified of, but I can find the resilience and the relentlessness and the courage to just get after it and do it and not stop until I get there.
Kristen, can you see now why she's a great coach?
I do. And I wanted to ask you about the coaching, because you coach elite athletes now. How do you teach them to work with their boundaries? How do you shake them up?
Yeah, well, this is, I think it's why a lot of them come to me, and it's incredibly because I've had athletes, my one athlete, she's a 4-time world champion. She's won the Hawaii Ironman 3 times. She showed up in the sport just like I did. She was not a great triathlete. But we worked together from 2004, we started working together, and it's all about, how bad do you want it and why do you want it? Why is this important to you? Whatever you have in life that you want to achieve, like what is a reason why this is so important to you? Because there's got to be emotion backing that purpose. And it's basically, I have all my athletes become so accountable to themselves and to me about, what scares them. They have a race and maybe they give up early because it gets too painful. Like, own it. Tell me what happened. Tell me why you stopped. Tell me why you fell short. Let's break through that. Let's get better next time. And every athlete I have, the number one thing that I say to my athletes is, I care way more about who you are as a human being than who you are as an athlete and what you achieve. Because if we all, first and foremost, take care of feeling good about who we are on the inside and living fearlessly authentic, we can achieve so much more because we don't have that resistance or those walls built up that do act as kind of a barrier and slow us down. So I guess, it's the communication, and it's going deeper than just coaching them in swimming, biking, and running. It's really trying to strengthen them from the inside out, and really connect them to their deep why, their purpose, their passion. And it's an unbelievable combination because when you're doing all those things and leaving no stone unturned, mind, body, spirit, it's unbelievable what they can accomplish. And I'm just so proud of them. It's the ultimate privilege to coach these tremendous athletes. It really is.
Well, Siri, it must be a once-in-a-lifetime experience to be coached by you. And I think you don't have to be an athlete necessarily to benefit from your story and what you had to tell us. And I wish we had so much more time. Don't you, Judy?
Totally.
We're going to have to get Sam to give us a 2-hour block one of these days and just get all through it, girl, because it's going to be a long marathon of good vibes here. Well, Siri, I know that our listeners are eager to learn more about you and get in touch with you. How do they connect with you?
We have about 30 seconds.
They can connect with me on Facebook, Siri Lindley, or Twitter @CELTS, CLTS, and I would love to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Siri.
Yeah, thank you, Siri.
Thank you so much.
S as in Sally, ELTS. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And next week, Bill Carmody is coming back. He's always fun and full of wisdom and wit. He founded one of the largest marketing firms, or I should say most successful marketing firms in New York City. And he's also a motivational speaker and writer for Inc. magazine and the founder of Panty Prop. This is an invention you won't believe that is changing the world of women and young girls. So remember, subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't miss one show. Go to What Women Want Radio for more, our archives, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.